Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started as we continue to let people come in the room. So again, I'm Marcia Nedland. I am going to be the moderator for today's panel, and one of my consulting gigs is that I'm the organizer for the Middle Neighborhoods Community of Practice. And today's webinar is supporting seniors in middle neighborhoods. So just to let you know, those of you who may not be all that familiar with the National Middle Neighborhoods Initiative, it's focused on just mobilizing attention toward those neighborhoods that are neither the most distressed in their communities, nor are they the healthiest. And we know that they're disappearing as a group, which partly has to do with the disappearance of the middle class in general, but we see them disappearing either by becoming gentrified or through unchecked decline, and they're slipping into becoming more distressed because people tend to assume that they're doing okay and not focus on them. So we do our work through the community of practice. That's got a lot of people in it now. I'm not even sure the last number that we came up with. And it's basically a lot of practitioners, but it's also researchers, policymakers, intermediaries, others that all work in middle neighborhoods and care about them. We support research on topics related to middle neighborhoods and about middle neighborhoods themselves to try and understand more about them. Policy analysis and advocacy happens through the National Community Stabilization Trust, which is our sort of institutional home, and the community of practice is supported by NeighborWorks America. So those two organizations together really share the most of the support for the movement. We have a steering committee of about 20 people, and one of them is one of our panelists today. We also do communication strategies and advancing awareness. So that's the Middle Neighborhoods Initiative. We want to just say, I've said most of this already, we don't have a hard and fast set of metrics for what a middle neighborhood is or is not. But if you think about your community, and as I described before, what are neither the most distressed neighborhoods nor the most self-sustaining, those are probably your middles. And they tend to have mostly been built as single-family homes for families with children in that time period when that was a huge part of our national demographic. They tend to be still well more than 50% owner-occupied, but that has been slowly eroding, at least up until COVID, and we need to do a massive recheck now to see if that has changed. One of the common characteristics is that the housing stock, although it's not in really bad shape, it is aging, and it often the challenge is that it doesn't have the sort of features and updates to compete well for today's home buyers, which makes it sometimes really vulnerable to investor purchase. One of the very interesting things about middle neighborhoods is that I like to think of them as they are those diverse, both racially, ethnically, and economically neighborhoods that we all talk about wanting to create. We want mixed income neighborhoods. We want neighborhoods that have enough diversity that they're not vulnerable, and that they sort of support each other and provide places for people to move up in the world. That's one of their great assets. And so it's a great reason to preserve them and help support them. So one of the things that means is that in any middle neighborhood, you're likely to find block clusters where it's 100% home ownership and everything's great. And you'll also find block clusters where you may have a higher density of rental stock and maybe more distressed conditions. One of the things, a tool that we have that can help you sort out where your middles are, at least take a first run at that, is a mapping tool that allows you to just put in your SMSA and then look at the left and toggle amongst those various income indicators, and it'll just pop out census tracts that meet those different income ranges. It's really only the first step, because for most anybody who's a middle neighborhood practitioner, income is a first screen, but then you start to look a little bit more at where you might need to focus. And also, this is a point in time indicator. The idea of looking at trends is very important in understanding what's happening with middle neighborhoods, but it's a great first start. So today we have an incredible set of panelists. They're all really tops in their fields. They're really leading, I think, the field on the issue of, being responsive to seniors that live in middle neighborhoods. So first up, we have Delia Yarrow. She's the Director of Homeownership at Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services, or I used to live there, and our beloved INHS. I've never, I don't think, known a nonprofit that has such incredible name recognition throughout its community, and people know it by its acronym INHS. And then we have Tiffany Smith, who is a member of our National Steering Committee. Tiffany's the Associate Director of Southside Neighborhood Services and Operations for NHS Chicago, flagship of the NeighborWorks network, and always innovative and always leading the edge. Chelsea Miller is also from INHS, and she's the Director of Property Management. So she's going to be able to talk to us about, in their extensive rental portfolio, sort of this concept that if you're doing affordable rental, you're doing senior housing. And so she's going to talk to us about that. And then Joshua Sankowski is Director of Corporate Partnerships for Pastone Corporation in Rochester. He's going to talk to us about a really amazing retrofit of a shopping mall that was sort of defunct, and having turned that into senior housing with supportive services. And I think he's going to be joined by a colleague of his, Jason Sackett, who has also been a lead person on that project. So we'll get a double whammy there of building senior housing with supportive services, but also doing it by taking over commercial property that's no longer useful to the community and reusing it. So that's exciting. Our agenda is basically we're going to start with Delia to talk about their amazing decades-long mini repair program that helps seniors a lot and is a gateway to other ways to help them. Then we'll move to Tiffany to talk about the work they do around that area, but also she does some interesting stuff around helping seniors optimize their PITIE, and she'll tell you what that means, situation. So both of them are really talking about seniors who own their homes and how to help them stay there. And then we'll move into the rental area, and we'll have Chelsea Miller, who will talk about, again, what it's like to be a property manager doing affordable housing when a good chunk of your renter population are seniors. And then we'll talk with Josh and Jason about this whole shopping mall concept of senior housing and supportive services. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. Did I say everything I needed to say, Anne? Let's see. Oh, we're switching off now. We're going to let Delia take over, I think, and start to show her slides. So thanks, Delia, and welcome to Middle Neighborhoods.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. It's very exciting to be talking to you today about the work that INHS does. We're proud of what we do in terms of repair work and supporting seniors generally. So I'm hoping that I'm sharing my screen effectively with you guys. Right now, as Marcia said, INHS has been doing this work since we were founded in 1976, and we work in affordable housing, basically trying to help folks in every way we possibly can. So we have rental units, which Chelsea will talk more about. That's not my part of the situation. We are also doing real estate development. So we are building primarily rental housing, but also for sale homeownership options that are sold in a community housing trust minor model. We do have minor and major repair programs. We help with down payment assistance for homeownership, and we have recently purchased a manufactured home community. So we are starting to figure out how to replace deteriorated manufactured homes, site new homes on vacant lots, and try to overall improve the community that we are working with. So our mission is to help low and moderate income households have access to safe, healthy, and affordable homes. And I'm going to talk to you about the senior repair portion of that work. So we have a minor repair program. That program is focused on senior homeowners, but we do help folks with disabilities regardless of age. And if we have flexible funding, you know, there have been circumstances where we've helped single parents or folks with other kind of limited incomes. The major benefit of our minor repair program is that we have two people on staff that do the actual repair work, and we have a wealth of expertise in addition to those two folks. So when we're taking a look at what does a house need and what does somebody need to safely stay in their home, we are looking at the whole house. So if it needs a roof, obviously that's not minor repair, but we're kind of referring folks over to what resources might you have for a roof. And then if we're doing a repair, I think one thing that when I'm talking to people who are using our services is very important to them is that the work that we do or that the minor repair specialists do is quality work. So we're not gluing a grab bar to the wall that's only going to fall off and cause somebody injury. We're going to properly install it in the shower or outside the shower or at the top of the stairs or wherever folks are needing those grab bars. So it's skilled labor, and it's also kind of looking at the whole situation of the house. And then most of the time, we're also able to pay for the materials that somebody would need. So if they need a Comfort Height toilet, we're paying for that and all the plumbing, and really all they're doing is signing the paperwork as required by our funder. And the minor repair program generally focuses on accessibility, health and safety repairs. We do a lot of exterior porches and railings, like you can see in the picture, because upstate New York is cold and snowy. Stairs deteriorate pretty quickly, and so that's a good chunk of what we end up doing. Also grab bars. And as I said before, when we look at the whole house, we are pulling in resources. So if somebody says to me, I don't have hot water, then I'm going to send them to all of the folks locally that potentially could help with a no heater, no hot water situation, or whatever else is going on in the home. And our minor repair program, as helping, as I said, primarily seniors. So 88% of the folks that we helped included someone over 60. When we're doing more major repair work, so that would be roofs and septics and basements and that kind of stuff, it's 44% of everybody that we serve. And then when we're looking at who we're serving and income-wise, the folks that we serve with both the minor and the major repair program who are seniors are very low income. So 73% of them are under 50% of AMI. Most often what we're seeing in terms of income is folks are living on Social Security and maybe a tiny pension of like $100 or $200 a month. That's not enough money. So that would be one, if I had one overarching thing to say about serving seniors in this environment is folks don't have enough for medication, food, and housing costs, let alone maintenance. And so that, I think, is why part of why these programs are so important is, you know, if you're choosing between your medication and rebuilding your stairs, you're going to choose your medication. And so we provide an opportunity to get some things done that otherwise folks would be struggling or putting off, sometimes with catastrophic results. So I described those minor and major repair programs. Things that we have paid attention to in terms of how we fund these programs and how we administer them is we have a long wait list. The need, as I have said, is way beyond what we can have, what we can serve, even in our tiny county of 100,000 people. We have a wait list of between 70 and 130 people at any given time. We prioritize emergency repairs. So if we get a call from a homeowner or a social worker or a family member and someone is in the hospital or in a long-term rehab and needs grab bars or needs a comfort height toilet or needs something to be able to come out and be able to go home or safely stay in their home because of a change in health, then we will jump and do that job within the week, depending on permitting. And that has been really helpful. We've received a lot of good feedback. One issue that folks have, even when they're higher income, is just being able to find the labor to do a thing. So, you know, we had a call recently from someone who could pay for the service, but couldn't find anyone to install grab bars, you know, and needed that in order to safely come home. And we have enough sort of flexibility in terms of our staffing that we can help in an emergency situation. If it's a senior that just needs us to install the grab bars, they'll pay for the grab bars, and we will make sure that that happens so that folks aren't falling in their homes. So that's one program design thing that I think is important. We have the ability to take a look at tax exemptions and make sure if somebody is eligible for a senior tax exemption that they're receiving that. Specifically, that is available in New York State to homeowners in manufactured home communities. And sometimes those exemptions that eligibility doesn't get communicated to folks or pass through from the park owner. So that's something that we make sure that folks are aware of. We have a really lovely assessment department that's good at helping folks with the paperwork. But if you don't know that you could be getting a tax exemption and paying significantly less in taxes, then you may not have claimed that. INHS also provides post-purchase classes. We talk to folks about hiring contractors, seasonal maintenance, and the class that I think is specifically tailored to seniors that I'm most proud of is we have an attorney who does wills and estates and planning for folks come in and talk about protecting your assets. So in that case, it's your home, but it's sort of what you need to get in order. Because INHS has been lending on homes since 1976, we have seen a lot of cases where there are multiple heirs and a home may go basically be lost to tax foreclosure in that circumstance. So the importance of wills and planning is not something that we take lightly. And as I said before, if there's a circumstance that INHS can't help with, we spend a lot of time developing connections with folks who are doing work in the community. So what are the most flexible funding sources? Who are the people who do case management, who can help in the event of a water heater going out, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, one thing I would say that we've seen that has increased significantly in the pandemic times is that folks are more and more isolated, living in their homes, even if that is where people want to remain. We know the drawbacks of nursing homes and assisted living, not only expense, but also capacity. And so for folks who are living in their homes and generally pretty isolated, we serve Tompkins County and upstate New York. We're like more cows than city. People can get really, really isolated in their spaces. And so interacting with any staff from INHS, part of what we're doing when we are talking to folks on the phone is like listening for health histories. We're talking, we're getting their whole life stories as we're installing that Comfort Hite toilet, right? And so when we're hiring and training staff, we're looking for folks who will be able to handle that piece of the job, the sort of emotional support connection piece of the job, who are going to have more than a 2-word answer and would have a ready smile or a giggle for the person that they are working with that day. And so that those are maybe the most crucial aspects of our repair work. And what we've thought about, I would say, like one other piece is that we take seriously that a lot of the seniors we're working with have organizational difficulties. And so we try to make the paperwork as minimal as possible for our minor repair program. We take stated income. We have them sign a couple of forms, but there is like nothing they need to dig up to prove anything to us. And so that allows us to help people who are in situations where they have dementia or the lack of organization of their paperwork. And that's really good. For our major repair programs, because we accept state and federal local funding sources like home and CDBG, we don't have flexibility and we have to get all their income documentation. And so that is why when you see the major repairs, I would say we serve a lower percentage of senior clients. The barrier of providing that documentation is not insignificant. Other sources that can provide help specifically for major repairs is USDA. I've seen that VA has some accessibility funding. We haven't taken advantage of that, so I can't speak to how that goes. And then for our minor repair, we have funding from our local office of the aging, both county and city governments, from lenders, local foundations, private donations. We've also heard of other nonprofits pitching healthcare companies and senior living communities for donations, kind of as this is a program who doesn't want somebody to be safe in their home. So the pitch on this is, I think, pretty easy in terms of getting a broad range of community support. So that is what INHS is doing. If you have any questions about how we're funded or how we do our administration, I'm always happy to chat. And that is my email.
Thank you, Delia. That was so interesting. I love your insight on hiring staff to work with this program and what those particular kinds of social skills are that are needed to be, just responsive and sensitive to that audience. And of course, I'm really a big fan of your work to try and get stated income as much as possible to increase the uptake on this program. So thanks so much for that. We are going to have Q&A time at the end. So let's switch over now to Tiffany, who is also going to talk mainly about, senior home owners and the ways that NHS Chicago reaches out to them, including something that's really a little bit unique in my personal experience, which is this PITIE optimization. So take it away, Tiffany. Welcome.
Thank you, Marcia. And just a housekeeping item. I don't want people's questions to get lost in the chat. So if I may suggest, can you put your questions in the Q&A? Because I saw a couple good ones that while Delia was talking that I think might get lost back there. So questions, please put them in the Q&A because those are always great. And quietly, it gives us more ideas so we can go and practice them and come back and do another webinar. All right, so my name is Tiffany Smith, and I am with Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago. And as Marcia alluded to earlier, I am the Associate Director of Southside Neighborhood Strategies and Operations. It's a mouthful, I know. But did want to give you some insight into some of the work we are doing here in Chicago. Before we get to that, though, I just want to give an overview of NHS Chicago. Really, our goal here is to help people buy, yes, fix, and keep, which is the biggest hurdle there, right? Particularly right now. So we focus on trying to do that through education and counseling, lots of one-on-one counseling, lots of group education in the post-COVID, or I don't know what we're calling this, endemic COVID period. We are now, most of our classes are online, so you don't actually even have to be in Chicago. And then we have brought some back in person though, which actually gives my heart joy because I just love seeing people in person. But education and counseling, which takes place online or in one of our offices, typically our Southside hub. We also engage in affordable lending. Our sister organization, Neighborhood Lending Services, really is a tool to help people access capital. And it's also a cool benefit because anyone who goes through our NLS thing, they actually use our construction services team, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. And then our housing development team, so the Redevelopment Corporation, which kind of finds those blocks in the city that they need a little love and finds a way to bring those back into vibrancy. So if it's sometimes buying up a block, if it's sometimes that one building that's bringing down the block and we can find a way to put it into a family's hands, then let's do it. So that's the Redevelopment Corporation. And then neighborhood revitalization is really kind of what we do in the neighborhood strategies team. We are the cool kids in the crew. We're the boots on the ground, feet on the street, finding out what people really need. So a couple of things we do to really serve our aging homeowners. I've been cautioned about saying senior homeowners lately, so I'm trying to find other terminologies. So our aging homeowners to help keep them in their homes or at least within the community. So group education is super important, as I alluded to before. Each month, in fact, it's the second Thursday of every month, we host a class online called Financial Self-Defense. Financial Self-Defense is delivered by my colleague, John Groney, who's been doing this, over 20 years. And he is just so passionate about it. Like nobody else can do this class. This is his baby. He actually started out of this work, out of the financial self-defense work from and grant, because I saw a lot of questions about, well, who funded that? Who funded that? Okay, I will tell. I won't hide my sources. But Retirement Research had been giving us a grant to go, hey, how can we better serve, right? And so John did a really interesting thing where he just started digging in and really looking at people's monthly billings to figure out how we could help people stay in their homes longer and really decrease their cost of home ownership. So out of that came a financial self-defense class and realizing a lot of our folks were not taking advantage of the number of exemptions we have in Cook County. Cook County is actually quite fortunate. I know everyone's like, your taxes. And I'm like, no, we're actually a bit more fortunate than a lot of people in that we have a large number of exemptions. Like there are many to choose from. So it's not just your normal homestead exemption, but there's the senior exemption. Then there is the senior freeze. I mean, there's the veterans, there's the disabled, there's all kinds of exemptions. So making sure our homeowners are getting the full value and not paying more than they need to is really part of our mission to help keep them in their homes and then appealing their property taxes. We have found, and why we've partnered with organizations like PTAP, which is the Property Tax Appeal Program, we have found that homeowners of color are actually less inclined to appeal their property taxes. Hence, they end up paying more for properties that are actually valued less than some of the homes in the city. So we want to make sure that our homeowners are, again, paying only what is supposed to be paid. Everybody needs to pay their fair share, but historically, our communities have been over assessed. So really trying to turn back the clock on that and make sure folks are paying only their fair share. In addition to that, Marcia alluded to that PITIE counseling, and we'll go into that in the next slide, as well as estate planning. I think Delia alluded to it earlier. It is so important, and we have found so much so that in our middle neighborhoods on the south side, in particular, our Chatham community, we were coming up with zombie houses because the heirship was so tangled, and like property tax bills weren't even going to the right person. Hence, the house shows up on the property tax sale, and sure enough, there's the legacy gone because that deed has been sold, right? So really making sure that those seniors in their household have made it very clear what their intentions are and have documented it, and more importantly, recorded it at the recorder of deeds. And then home improvement grants. So first, we're going to talk about that PITIE, which stands for, right, principal and interest, right? The T is taxes, the I is insurance, and the E is energy costs, right? So for the most part, our seniors are for the most part out of their mortgage. We always will look at it if they're still in mortgage, but more likely than not, they are going to be outside of mortgage. So the biggest areas of opportunity for us in that PITIE counseling occurs at the homeowner's insurance level and those taxes. Sometimes it's at the energy level, and I'll go into that in a second. What we have found in Illinois is, and I'm sure many of you have, those poor dears, I saw Pensacola, Florida, good Lord, and California, right? Those homeowner insurance rates have just gone through the roof. And so on average, we've seen an increase of 20% throughout the state of Illinois. Chicago gets even more tricky depending on the neighborhood. And what we're finding is our seniors are often paying far more in property insurance than they should be. So on average, within the city of Chicago, you should be able to get single family homeowner insurance, right? If you are claim free 3 years, things of that nature, you should be able to find single family homeowners insurance between $1,700 and $2,300 a year. We are finding single family homeowners who are paying $4,500 a year in insurance. And we're like, wait, what? And it baffles me. Like, and you didn't notice, you thought that was normal. And it's like, well, yes, if it keeps going up, well, then why would you question it? And then there's a sense of loyalty with their insurance providers. So my colleague, with that grant money, he started digging in even more and started looking and going, okay, what is going on here? And so it is price optimization. And our insurance providers have actually made no secret about this. Crane did an article years ago in the early 2000s about price optimization in the insurance industry, property insurance industry. And it is a thing. And so part of that financial self-defense and that PITIE is very much training our seniors to question, to say, yeah, Bob, you know what? You have been a loyal family friend for 20 years, and you are always going to be a loyal family friend. However, I need you to go back and figure out why my insurance is this high. And if you can't, then I'm going to have to go see John over here at the next provider. And be okay about that and be firm in that, because as my colleague always says, the only person watching over your money is you. So protecting those assets that you built up and that legacy you want to leave behind, part of that is making sure you're not overpaying on your home insurance. And so that is a huge saver. And even those that are in mortgage, when they go, gosh, my mortgage is just out of reach, I don't know what happened, 9 times out of 10, we're looking at that insurance or those property taxes that are driving that up. So that, again, even if they're still in mortgage, we're going to try and find them savings there. But going on to property taxes, right? Senior exemption, we find so many of our residents are not taking their senior exemptions. And in fact, if you go to the DePaul Institute of Housing Studies website, they can actually give you a snapshot of what it looks like, just to give you an example in the Chicagoland area of how few exemptions are being taken in certain neighborhoods. So it's an actual real opportunity to reclaim some value and reinvest money into the home so that they can stay there. In addition to that is that senior assessment freeze. And so this applies in Cook County. There are some other jurisdictions that do this as well, so definitely dig in and see. But in Cook County, if our homeowner makes $65,000 or less annually, meaning the household income, not just the homeowner, household income is $65,000 or less, then they can each year apply for that senior freeze. The senior freeze, the point of the senior freeze is to eventually that tax liability for that homeowner as they get older gets down to goose egg. If you keep doing it and they keep persevering, then it can get down to zero. So it is a good value and a good tax savings for our seniors as they are living on fixed income. And of course, costs are going up and trying to keep them in the house. That's one way we can kind of control that expense if they are in that precarious position of $65,000 or less. The other area of opportunity we're finding more recently is we've had deregulation of our gas and electric in Illinois. And much in the way of the early 80s in the long distance provider game, where MCI, Sprint, and AT&T were doing battle to get you as a customer, we're finding that some of our seniors are being slammed, which is what we used to call it in the long distance business, where someone will say, "Hey, they'll come to your door and I can save you on your gas bill. Just show me your bill." They're taking a picture of that bill, slamming folks, right? So we educate our residents on how to check their bill, their light bill or their gas bill, to make sure that they are paying the lowest regulated rate. Oftentimes it is the old, big guys, the ComEds and those guys, but making sure that they are paying the lowest regulated rate, because those pennies do add up. $30 a month, $40 a month over a year is significant impact to that annual cost of home ownership. And in Chicago, super lucky we are. And my dad realized it when he went south for a minute and was like, "Hey, we get nickel and dime." I'm like, "Yeah, you do." Water bills. So the sewer tax exemption applies also for our seniors. They don't have to pay the sewer tax on that water bill, which everyone's like, "Okay, is it really that much?" I'm like, again, pennies add up, particularly when you are on a fixed income. Other things that we do is to, like what Delia was talking about, is the grants. So my team member down in the South Suburbs has this wonderful program, and I saw a lot of things in the chat going, "We have a small handyman program." Yeah, we do too. And so one of those is actually in our South Suburbs. Sandra Wells, who is our coordinator out in the Southland, manages a program that gives up to $5,000 in grant. And we actually project manage the service through that, through the process for them. And it really is small things that need to be done to keep that home healthy, keep them safe in that home. So if it's small plumbing, if it's like little kitchen things, adaptive or assisted devices, ramps. Oh my goodness, there's always a wait list for ramps when they are grant eligible. But those things, through a lovely grant that was provided by Age Options, really does go really far in our Southland. So we started out in Cal City, but that grant got renewed. So they're going to be expanding their footprint to help even more seniors. And I will tell you, our seniors do, or our aging homeowners do, a very good job of smiling through it. It isn't until you get in those homes and you go, "Oh my gosh, wait, how are you living? How did that happen?" $5,000 is nowhere near enough. It is just a start. But it is something to kind of at least get them on that road. And kind of what we do with this next one, which is the Critical Home Improvement Program, which is in specific neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. It is a grant that's provided by ICJA, which is the I always say it wrong, Illinois Criminal Justice Department, basically. I always joke and call it the marijuana money. So this is money that has come from the taxes from legalization of marijuana in the state of Illinois. It is part of the Renew, Reinvest grants to really help restore the neighborhoods that were very much impacted by the war on drugs. And so we applied for a grant in one of our target neighborhoods, the neighborhood I first started working on when I first came to NHS, which is the Greater Chatham communities and Inglewood. So in Chatham, Grand Crossing, Auburn, Gresham, Avalon Park, and Inglewood, our seniors and folks with disability can apply for what we call the Critical Home Improvement Grant Program, which is CHIP. CHIP addresses health and safety issues in the home. So deferred maintenance, those porches, if you need grab rails, up to $15,000. And that was our year one grant. We're trying to get that number increased because we found $15,000 doesn't even go very far for some of these homes, because the level of deferred maintenance is so great. It just keeps adding the cost on. I'm super lucky in that one of our first projects that we did, sweet woman, she was about to go in a housing court. I mean, like she had had so many tickets, the windows, the roofs, the porches. She was getting tickets from the building department. And she had been working with one of our partner organizations, Center for Disability and Elder Law, like, how can I get out of housing court? And I was like, hey, we got this grant. And so really partnered with them to figure out what we can do to kind of minimize any financial impact to her, because again, she couldn't afford it. But she had a beautiful home that just needed a lot of attention and love and funding that she just didn't have. So through the Critical Home Improvement Grant, we were able to actually keep her out of housing court or get those tickets taken off, partnered with the Department of Buildings to kind of say, okay, what is the priority here, and help triage and prioritize that. Our construction services team ushers each one of these grants through its process to make sure that that scope of work has been completed, the work has been completed to code and to satisfaction of the resident, who is ultimately the customer. Even though it's a grant, they still must be satisfied. And then ensure the payout to the contractor that is being used. In addition to getting the repairs done, part of the condition of that critical home improvement program is that they must go through PITIE counseling. And again, it is to make sure that they can save on their monthly cost of home ownership. And then that third condition of that grant is that they must complete some form of estate planning. Often it is what we call a TODI, which is a transfer on death instrument. It is not appropriate, though, for every senior that comes or senior homeowner through the program. So if it's appropriate, then CEDO will help them with their TODI. And again, that's at no cost to the resident, and we pay the recording fee. So when it's filed with this, the county recorder, then it's on record. If anything goes wrong down the road, they at least have had that property vouched for, and their intentions have been made known. So $15,000 grant in a specific neighborhood, the Greater Chatham Communities in Inglewood. The first cycle, we budgeted for 40 grants. We got over 2,000 applications. So to Delia's point, everything is oversubscribed. People, I think, really underestimate the need of our seniors. And more so, I was very intentional in choosing the Greater Chatham Communities because a number of our municipal employees actually live in that neighborhood. And so kind of what Delia was talking about, when you use federal dollars, state and city dollars, which are often leveraging other federal dollars, you are very much tied to these income eligibility rules. And CDBG dollars really only take you to 80% of AMI. In our area, our AMI wraps in Joliet and Naperville, which I'm like, dude, that cost of living is nothing compared to Chicago. What are you doing? So it kind of suppresses that number. And our municipal employees on paper, or retirees on paper, look very solid. So that number will look 130, 140%, 150% of AMI. On this grant, the Critical Home Improvement Program, we said, okay, hold on. We can't do business as usual. I need to be able to shift this up, which is why we were able to do it with this grant, because it leverages the marijuana dollars. So it is not those federal restricted dollars. And so we took that AMI up to 140%, up to 140% for this one, so that more of our residents could be eligible that are actually in need. On paper, it may show that their pension is going to give them, a single family household, because the single woman is living alone. It may show on paper that she gets $95,000 annually in pension. What it's not showing is the changes that were made to their benefits after they retire. And so $90,000 comes in the door, but before it even hits in the table, it's going back out to cover the dental, to cover the prescriptions, to cover because those things aren't covered as much anymore. They've made those changes. So I really challenge us, if we've got good ears on this call, to really start looking at alternatives to AMI and poverty level, because it is not truly reflective. And I always encourage people, when you went to buy your house, did they look at your gross income? No. No one lives off their gross income. And AMI really does rely too heavily on that. So that's me coming off my soapbox. So if you want to know more, if you want to participate in our webinars, you can visit us at nhschicago.org/courses. If you want to get a hold of me, I will drop my information in the chat. But it's tsmith@nhschicago.org. And that beautiful lady right there is Nita Haley, who is, everyone on the west side of Chicago knows her. She should have retired. She's old enough to retire, and she's like, I'm gonna retire. She won't retire because she loves taking care of her community. So this is our person who does our farmers market throughout the summer, every Saturday, 4 a.m., who does a community garden, and she is an outreach coordinator on the west side of Chicago. If you have questions or thoughts, put them in the Q&A because we are so interested in hearing those. All right, Marcia, back to
Thank you
you.
so much, Tiffany. I just had a dog walker come in the house and all the dogs went insane. So I was dragging there a bit. That was really, really interesting. It occurs to me as I was listening to you, Tiffany, that, I think this whole subject is not only about helping those seniors stay in place. It's also about preserving that housing stock for our neighborhoods and for our future. When you talk about the amount of disinvestment, it does add up a little bit here and there over the course of 20 years or more. And you've got some real problems on your hands. And that could be a real problem in terms of that housing stock passing to another owner occupant, or at least not a bad investor. So that's really, really outstanding that you have that point of view. So let's switch over to Chelsea now. And Chelsea, remember, is going to talk to us about the whole idea that if you're doing affordable rental housing, you're probably also doing senior housing.
Yes.
So welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So yes, we have a lot of multifamily housing that we offer, and we also have a specific senior building. And for us, like Delia had mentioned, it really does start with our staff and having the understanding of who our residents are and how we can help them and how we can help them stay in their units. We do have quite a few people that come from being in a home and are now downsizing to come into a apartment. And that can be quite a process. It can be very overwhelming. Sometimes people don't know where to start. They don't know the questions. They don't know what to do. So we do get a lot of calls about that. And it's just for us, it's having the knowledge and being able to walk people through what our process is and, just from filling out the application, and this is what we do, and this is how we get you in the apartments. So for us, it's really knowing on the property management side, knowing our residents, knowing their needs, knowing who their caseworkers are, and being in communication with caseworkers if needed. And also, if there is any authorized family members that we're allowed to speak with, we often have to go through family members if there's questions or, some of our residents need help with paperwork, or they need help even just getting their rent to us and, how that works, or why their rent may be a different amount. So kind of going through that process with the family member so they understand and they can help us help the residents. We do a lot of things in our senior building in terms of trying to make things easier, as easy as we can, I should say. There is a lot of paperwork that goes along with living in one of our buildings. They have to do their recertifications every year. So that's a lot of paperwork. And so we try to make it very easy. We have everything together. We have everything, pretty well laid out so we can explain things quickly and as easily as we can to everybody. We do have a lot of community agencies that will come in and speak with our seniors. We have Office of the Aging. We have 211, which is an organization that comes in and kind of talks really to the residents about anything that they may need help with that they don't know where to reach out to resources for. We do things like, at the height of the pandemic, we had a mobile clinic come in to give vaccinations to our residents because a lot of them were very scared to leave. They didn't want to leave their units. They didn't want to leave the building. So we provided that service. We had people come on site to give vaccinations to people that were wanting them. So yeah, for the property management side of it, it's really knowing your residents and helping them. We also do reasonable accommodations. We do quite a lot of them. Similar to what Delia has done on her side, we do a lot of grab bars. We do roll-in or walk-in showers. So we're often taking on those reasonable accommodations and doing the best we can to make the unit as safe as possible for the residents. We do a lot of, removing of certain flooring to put down carpets or vice versa, whatever is best for them, honestly. And keeping them in those units. Sometimes we run into situations where, somebody might get behind in rent. And so we really try to work with the individual and their family members and or caseworkers again, or reach out to agencies that we work with a lot to get them rental assistance if they need it. Sometimes their income changes. Or again, like Delia had mentioned, if they need to pay for medication, they're going to do that before they may pay their rent, which kind of gets them into a situation sometimes. And we really don't want to evict individuals. So we try to either work out a payment plan. We refer people to agencies. We help fill out the paperwork so they don't have to worry about that. Or talk with their family members to kind of get them back on track. So in my world, it's really about sitting down and knowing our residents and having somebody there for them to talk to. Sometimes people just want to come down to our office and talk, and that's fine. But yeah, it starts with our staff, like Delia mentioned, and kind of explaining the clientele that we serve and knowing that you're going to have to be patient. You may have to go over things a few times, and that's okay. Or in a different way, that's also okay. And yeah, so that's what we do on our side of the world.
Kelsey, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm old enough that this is starting to become something I'm aware of in my, much older friend population. But do you run into situations where you really have to intervene with the renter's family because they really can't live independently anymore?
It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. We do have quite a few people that have been with us for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does get to a point where, because us as the landlord, we can't make those decisions for them. We can speak with who we're authorized to speak with and just say, these things may be going on. They may need some extra assistance or help. And the family, a lot of the times the family member is already aware of what's going on. So they will step in and maybe work through the process of either getting them into assisted living if that's what's needed. Or a lot of times we do have people that move out and move back in with their family members. So it doesn't happen a lot, but it definitely does happen with our residents who have been long-term residents with us.
I can imagine that it could happen, and maybe we're all going to be seeing more of that. I was also really intrigued. It had not occurred to me till you mentioned it that, of course, you may be doing physical changes to the unit in order to make it more accessible for a senior or anybody else, I suppose, with any kind of mobility issues. So that's really fascinating. So do you actually will replace a shower with a walk-in shower sometimes?
Yes, we do that often.
That is really, really interesting. Okay. Well, thanks for that. And so now let's go to Joshua and Jason, who are going to talk to us about so you're past keeping people in their homes or just getting them in an independent living apartment. So now what if you need to really build some serious senior only housing that has supportive services? So Joshua, you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Josh Jankowski. I'm the Director of Corporate Partnerships here at Pathzone, and I've been here for almost 12 years. And I work closely with our program leaders, including my colleague Jason. And Jason took over our real estate development department about 2 years ago now. And going back, I would say 5 or 6 years ago, our previous head of real estate development, Amy Kashani, who I'm sure a lot of you know, Amy is an amazing person. She had this vision for years. She's an Irondequoit, New York native, and she had told me one day I'm going to make senior housing at the mall. And I was like, that sounds amazing. How are you going to do that? So that's kind of where this whole vision came from, is from Amy. And the Irondequoit Mall had actually been vacant for almost 15 years. And it just sat there, and it was the space, but it was on, a bus line and a major road with a lot of access. And next door, there's a Target. And our supportive service provider for Skyview, which I'll talk about in a moment, is actually Rochester Regional Health, who has a new facility right across the street from the mall. So this idea for, the mall to be, kind of rehabbed came out of those things all coming together. The need for senior housing, is obviously huge. And so Skyview was actually an old Sears building. And so the Sears was vacant, and we made this into 157 units of senior affordable housing. So half of those units are in the Sears building, and half of them are in a new build that's right next door, that's connected through a skyway kind of walkway that you can kind of see in a couple pictures. Here, I'll scroll. I don't know if you can see that. And the mall itself is accessible to the building, where the seniors have, access to walk the mall. There's a community center that was built by the town that is also attached to the mall. They took over another one of the box stores. So inside Skyview, with the supportive services that are provided by the ESHI program in New York State, is we have Rochester Regional Health, who has their actual office right in Skyview. And so half of those units are for ESHI participants, and they have access to services such as bus passes, other transportation needs to and from, medical appointments or whatever else they need. The apartments become furnished for these participants, and they have access to all of those kind of case management options. And this is actually our first time doing an affordable housing development with such a high number of ESHI participants. So in the past, we've had maybe a few units in each development, be part of this program, but having 50% is definitely interesting. And we actually manage this development as well. Our property management team has an office in there for lease up. So our property management team and the ESHI team kind of work together. And so with all of these amenities, it's been great to have, the seniors have access to a community, and, right on the main road, with access to, food services and whatever else they may need. And these are 1 and 2 bedroom units. And inside the actual redevelopment, we were able to create 3 courtyard spaces. So they have outside space within the development itself. And it's just been super, super interesting to see the mall come to life and be repurposed for such an important need. And now I'll turn it over to Jason for more technical details. And yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. And as Josh alluded to, my name's Jason Sackett. I'm the president of Pastone Development Corporation, which my area of discipline is real estate development. Our current footprint for real estate development is obviously here in New York, but also in Indiana and Puerto Rico. As Josh said, we're very, very proud of the Skyview Park Apartments. It's, to our knowledge, the first adaptive reuse of a former mall. And I'll go into a lot of the benefits and details. To take a step back, I think to understand the development of Skyview is to know a little bit more about the town of Irondequoit, just given our audience. So Irondequoit is a suburban ring of the city of Rochester, which is a larger upstate New York city. The current population is about 50,000 and counting. Some of the history, it's a very unique name for upstate New York, and it actually derived from the Iroquois saying where the land meets water. So the town is near one of the Great Lakes, which is Lake Ontario. So much like a lot of areas post World War II, there was a baby boomer population boost, or boom rather, from about 20,000 to about 46,000 in the span of 20 years. So that equated to about 136%. So if you can imagine supply and demand, a lot of the development in the town was catered towards lower density residential and single family development to meet the needs of those at the time. So we fast forward, 40, 50 years down the road, and we've got the majority of the primary market area that, either needs to downsize, they'd like to excel and, go into a rental to avoid maintenance and things of that nature. So that's where the conversation between the town and Pathstone and other stakeholders began. We looked at a variety of different sites in the area, and I think to Josh's point, we probably picked the most challenging site that we could, and everything turned out great. So we identified the former Irondequoit Mall, and again, just a little bit of history. I know malls are becoming less of a commercial use all around the country. This mall is not atypical to what's happening in your neighborhoods as well. So it was opened in 1990. Believe it or not, had 110 stores and 4 anchor tenants. So if you can put yourself back in those days, it was this big epicenter. I'm a local person, so I visited the mall in my childhood many times. So it was really one of the destination points, again, that just became antiquated, and other things have taken its place. Amazon, other types of internet commercial users and things of that nature. So the mall was completely vacant by 2007. And believe it or not, there really was a lot of conversations and challenges in what to do with the site. We partnered with the town around a decade later. So at this point, if you can imagine what the site would look like, it was, very blighted. It began to garner a lot of negative attention for those reasons. So, things that people wouldn't want to be happening in their neighborhood were happening. So we identified this site, and really at a high level, it was a twofold strategy. So the town recognized a need to have a community service facility, aka a gathering space. So they helmed that piece of the project, which I'm happy to provide more information. Again, just reach out after this. Our component was a purely residential conversion. So as Josh alluded to, we worked through a lot of challenges with the town, things like zoning issues. How do we change our local zoning to facilitate, at the time, what was a very unique conversion of uses. Also things like real estate tax abatements and things to make the project feasible. So local approvals are very important and paramount to what we do. So in regard to design, and I think the pictures can do it more justice than I can. We have 2 components, one of which is the adaptive reuse of the former Sears box store. And then to get economies of scale, which is very important both for development and property management, we decided to build a new construction building adjacent to the Sears store, and link them by, an accessible exterior walkway. So it's a very unique design. Again, we're very proud. Both buildings are elevator buildings, which is great from a design and especially senior perspective. So there's 157 total units. We've got a mix of 145 one beds. The balance are 2 beds. Again, elevator buildings. We have very high quality finishes that we're very proud of, for the end user, you know, the residents and staff. And I think on page 3, if you scroll up, I had a note to look at the kitchen. So it's such an inviting design, and you know, a lot of time and effort went into the planning process to make sure that we were able to get funding in place to actually build something this nice. So speaking to that, we did, here in New York, we basically have 2 paths for what we call tax credit programming. One is smaller projects and one is larger, such as Skyview. So it was about a $40 million total development cost for the 2 buildings in the site. Funders included our New York State Housing Finance Agency, which supplies tax exempt bonds and other low interest loans. We were also able to incorporate New York State, aka NYSERDA energy and green funds. And then speaking to the relationship with the town and other stakeholders, we were able to get some local home and CBDG funds to help us with the capital stack. And then again, to speak to the supportive piece, in New York, ESHI, which is an acronym for Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative, is really aimed at identifying those with special needs and also those homeless or at risk of homeless. So we are not, you know, Pastone is not an expert in that space. So we made the strategic decision to partner with Rochester Regional Health. So they pursued what is called ESHI grant and operating and service subsidy for half of the units. And so what that means is they're not only a management partner, but they have specifically trained staff in order to facilitate leasing units to, in this case, frail elderly seniors and those, you know, unhoused or at risk of being unhoused. So to elaborate on some of the other services that they provide, so it's things like furnishing the units. They connect those seniors to other supports within the community so that they can be successful. They also have very individualized case management, and they do transportation to medical appointments, and really just such a wide array of supports to allow seniors to age in place. So I hope that's given enough detail. And to, you know, to other panelists' points, I'll put my email contact information in the chat, and please feel free to contact me. We'd be happy to help support and foster similar redevelopments in your communities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason and Joshua. That was quite an offer Jason just made there, guys, if you heard that. I mean, Pastone does work at least in multiple states, if not the entire country, right?
Yeah, we
Jason?
currently do real estate development in 3 states, and we actually have a 9-state footprint currently.
Yeah, so he doesn't make that offer lightly. They're, you know, like any development arm, they're always looking for the next project, right? That also both meets the mission and also helps support their ongoing capacity. So that's interesting. You know, I mean, one of my takeaways from this presentation that the 2 of you did is is really this understanding that there are entities out there who know how to do the supportive service part. So you don't have to know how to do everything. You need really good partners. And Jason or Josh, if you could just add, I believe I've heard Josh speak previously about how you actually have new stores opening back up in the mall space again now. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So with kind of re-anchoring the space with all the residential, that's opened up opportunities for newer commercial to come in. So it's not obviously not as commercially dense as a mall, but it's something that's sustainable for the long term.
I mean, that is truly amazing. And I think Josh might have said there were 1 or 2 restaurants among that. So what a wonderful a set. I mean, sort of the merger of the senior housing and the potentially businesses that are especially suited to them, and the city wanting to do sort of a community center there, that really brings a lot of interesting sort of, mutually beneficial things together that can make it more viable, I'm sure, for the small businesses as well. So that's really fascinating. Well, let's turn to some questions. All right, here we go. Lacey Brown says she has a vacant grocery store, would make great for some low-income housing. Okay, well, you guys can connect with each other. I noticed that there was there are questions in the Q&A. So Jordan asks about the income of the apartments. I'm assuming you're talking about the senior housing. And this is actually very income restricted, as I remember Joshua describing.
Yeah, so in the case of Skyview, our typical process is to commission a market study. So we like to be at or below the street rent. So all of the units are income restricted. To one of the other panelists' point, we typically have fixed income seniors in our senior developments. And very little ancillary income other than Social Security. So in the case of Rochester, that average median income is about 93,000. So that can give you an idea of single person or double person households that would occupy our space.
And Shannon asks, which states are you in? What's the real estate development states?
We're in Indiana, New York, and Puerto Rico.
Okay. And you never know. I always consider it just a challenge then to figure out what would make it lucrative enough to attract Jason into my state if that wasn't one of them. Aubrey asks, with Rochester Regional as a partner, do you offer on-site medical services or partner with PACE? I just repeated those words, not knowing what Rochester Regional is the health medical center hospital.
Yes, that's correct. So that's a great point. They also have an internal network of affiliates, and I believe they utilize Elder One Care for certain things, and then PACE, which I'm not acutely aware of the details, but yes, they do provide on-site services. It just may be outside the Rochester Regional Health name.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I mean, there is this whole other parallel almost. I mean, it's becoming less parallel and more incorporated into community development, but the healthcare industry is partnering more and more with housing and community developers. And it seems like there have to be really great aligned objectives here. John Lehner asks a really good question, which I think might be an opening for Delia to talk about ADUs, what they're getting ready to think about. His question is, do any of the presenters develop new/replacement single-family housing units geared to senior needs in middle neighborhoods? So Delia, do you want to start with that and tell us a little bit about your perspective ADU project?
So we have some funding from New York State that is limited to the city of Ithaca to repair accessory dwelling units that are out of compliance with any kind of health and safety regulations and permitting, and or to build new units. The major barrier that we've come up against, both with the ADU problem or funding, not problem, well, every funding source brings problems, let's be honest, for those of us who are running these programs, that is so true. But with the ADU funding, and also when we are building new for sale homes, our problem in the city is flood zones make it really complicated to have an accessible unit. And so we have been building up in areas that are likely to get either in a flood zone currently or likely to be remapped into a flood zone, and building in such a way that any flood waters could move in and out of the home without causing damage. So basically it's like a crawl space scenario, and no basement in most of the places. So that is cost prohibitive with the funding that we have currently. We have not figured that out. And I know that this is a phone call that I get regularly and that breaks my heart. I'm in a home, my income is now fixed. The house has stairs. I need a house that does, so that is complicated. One solution that we are working on is citing manufactured homes now, because those homes, though they are built up, tend to be one level, and the cost of putting in a ramp, is, if our minor repair specialists do it, a couple $1,000. If we hire a contractor, let's say $8,000 to $10,000. So, but that's a doable cost, right? And the home is basically set up in such a way that accessibility, adaptation, although doorways, working on manufactured homes is slightly complicated. Doorways can be complicated, but we are working right now with a household where we're hoping to site a new home. Then we will choose a unit that is accessible and then be able to put a ramp so that the homeowner will be able to get in and out of their house, which is great. So yeah, no, I think the additional cost to make units accessible is not something where I'm like, oh yeah, somebody wants to give me an extra $40,000 or $60,000 to do that. And as Jason has been talking about, any deal to do a major project, you're already looking at, 8, 10, 17 sources, I think, in our last real estate developments, that with each with their own compliance. So it's a nightmare. And yeah, if there's anyone on this call that's like, I have a lot of money, give money to nonprofits to do that, to make senior housing that makes sense. That is a beautiful thing. And within a property that has multi-generational housing, to be able to do that in any number of ways. Some people do not want to live in a large building. They would like to own their own home and be a little outside of it, if at all possible. So I feel like the more solutions we can come up with, the better. All right, that was too long. Sorry, guys.
Well,
No,
and
I wanted to add. Oh,
yeah, go ahead, Tiffany.
I was going to say, no, I think, Dilly, you hit it on the head right at the end, which is the more solutions, right? It's not a one size fits all. And I just wanted to add on the ADU, I feel your pain. But also in these land constricted environments, right? Like, so Chicago, we're in here pretty snug. And so building back for the mother-in-law suite, like you could in LA, not so much, right? So it really is an up or down situation, which then presents problems because we are dealing with mobility issues. Look, I'm about to turn 50 next year, and I'm like, gosh, waking up in the winter is harder, right? So I can only imagine as I get older how that would be, trying to get up and down stairs. And to her point, even in a Chicago, which people don't think is a flood zone, it's like, oh, no, climate change is real. And so we've got a number of our neighborhoods where we have typically used our basements as secondary living space, not so much an option anymore, or we have to think differently about how to make that a bit more resilient. And so making that an ADU drives up that cost. And a number, again, really want to drive that home. A number of the residents who were like eligible in Chicago for our ADU grant had to be 80% of AMI or below. Presents a problem. And part of the great thing about ADU is it does give you an opportunity to do intergenerational living and also drive revenue, right? So if someone's on a fixed income, they can use that to help supplement their income. But if they're stuck in the middle and they can't get the funding to get the thing up to code in the first place, then what are we doing?
Yeah, ADUs are super complicated. We're actually trying to put together a webinar about them for next month, so stay tuned. And then what about anybody else? Are you building expressly for single family housing for seniors, or are you building single family housing and you're getting seniors?
So I can speak to that. So a lot of our development activities in Indiana center around rehabbing or building new single families. So I think we would describe them as general occupancy. So there are income restrictions attached, but we are seeing more and more interest from seniors, and a lot of it has to do with the style of the dwelling unit. So we work in 3 cities in Indiana. And again, a lot of it has to do with looking at the market and where is the gap that we can fill.
Lisa,
Okay.
you always do that. You give us a teaser. 3 cities in Indiana. What are the cities?
Yep, so we're currently working in Anderson, Muncie, and then we have some other work pending, which is in Indianapolis.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I mean, really, it's the every solution. We don't have enough of them yet. Jordan put in the chat that AARP is pushing for ADU policy changes in New York State. So that is fascinating. Sarah asked a question for the Irondequoit team. She lives in Irondequoit. Her family loves the community center. What is the community feedback now that the project is complete and residents have lived there for a year? i.e., are there still NIMBY detractors or any negativity for affordable housing? Did you get some initial freak out over affordability?
Yeah, I think in general, we've found, especially in rural and suburban communities, that we do a lot of education, not just top-down development. So we have had some challenges with Skyview, but I don't think that they are unique to Skyview. So we try to have very open communication with neighbors, and a lot of this site, if you look at it, even utilizing Google Earth or something of that nature, there's not a lot of low density residential near it. So that was part of the strategy, is how can we transform this site but not eliminate existing housing.
Sure. Now, by the way, are there still parts of the mall that are vacant and are yet to be revamped for use?
Yep, that's correct. Yep. So it's definitely a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. I actually, a small town that I grew up in, through a crisis of various things about their library system and all that, they built a new development that's a community center, a library, this and that. And I was really surprised by what a huge asset that is to communities, and it's really replacing something that was lost. I don't know if it was the downtown thing or something, but they're huge assets to communities. Okay,
Marsha, I wanted to also add in there too. Sorry, it's Tiff again.
No, go ahead.
in the urban environments, right? So one of the things that we're starting to look at, gosh, I wish Nidra, my partner in progress on the South Side, was on the call. So one of our vacant lots, right, is really a good example of what the plan is. So we've had a church that's owned a vacant lot. It used to be a liquor store years ago, and then it was vacant for years. And as part of the equitable transportation oriented development initiatives that we're doing in Chicago to kind of get to goal on the 2030 climate initiatives, that vacant lot is in the process of being reimagined to be mixed housing space with senior living up above, and commercial down at the bottom level. The reason it's so optimal and it works is it's on a major corridor, literally steps to the major train line, which is the Red Line in the city of Chicago, on the longest bus line, 79th Street corridor. It is in a space where you can get access to groceries, you can get access to those types of things, so you don't have to have a car. And it is in a neighborhood where a lot of them probably, once they've aged out of their homes, the goal is, if I can't keep you in your home, I want to be able to keep you in your neighborhood so you can still stay connected. So
That's
it
right.
provides a nice little pipeline for freeing up the home in the community so we can move a family in, but still keeping that previous homeowner in the community so they stay connected. Because we are finding in our middle neighborhoods, there just aren't enough spaces for our aging populations or older populations. I think I saw that in the chat for our older populations to transition to, so that they can still stay connected. The senior facilities that we're finding that, are what our residents would want are out in the suburbs. And they're like, but I stayed in the city for a reason, right? And it's because
Right.
my is close. It's because my friends are close. I can, walk around the park and do the park circle with my girls that I raised my kids with, right? So trying to find solutions within the communities that folks have raised their families is really going to be key for us as well, particularly in urban environments, leveraging those vacant lots and leveraging ETOD dollars to kind of get that done.
Yeah, I think that's right. Here's somebody put into the Q&A a link to the AARP's, what they have to say about ADUs. So that was fascinating. I did not know about this resource, and I didn't know that AARP had any thoughts about ADUs. So it's, it's such a hot topic nowadays across the country. And I think we're in this rapid phase of figuring out, testing different sort of enabling legislation and what helps facilitate the development of ADUs and what holds it back and all of these things. So it's something to pay attention to. I think our time is done. And Anne, you want to put, yes, so we're having an engagement chat. This topic is going to be fixing burnout, taking care of volunteers. We do the engagement chats. Anne does them quarterly, and they're really fun. So if you have any questions, you want to join that, just email Anne about that. Please email us if you have any ideas for webinars, case studies, if you have any news stories about things happening in your community that you want to share. We really want to hear it. We always like to promote our partners, Center for Community Progress. They have a cornerstone webinar series that usually has really, usually they're not always in high production, but when they are, they have great topics. So we really encourage you to check that out. Tell us about your experience today with the evaluation, and that gives you space to suggest other topics. Please join our community of practice. You can sign up at ncst.org/middle neighborhoods. And that way you'll be up on every little thing we do right away, and you'll know about our webinars. We also want to include you as speakers about the projects that you do. This whole thing is about having practitioners be able to share with each other about all the things they're trying and what's working and what's not working and all of that. So please do join us. And I think that's all, except I want to thank all of my panelists who are really leading the field in this area. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share your work with us. Have a great week, everyone.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, you too.